right, we are recording. I'm Jeff. That's Luke. And this is Nolan.
Hi.
um, and as we were talking about right before we started recording, we didn't really have anything specific that we wanted to talk about. We just knew that the three of us had never been in a conversation together. I have, first time I saw you, Nolan, was when you had your conversations with Paul Vanderklay. Then I know you had a conversation with Job that was on the Discord voice thing recording that made it onto the Bridges of Meaning podcast. And then Job sent me a video of that, and I uploaded that to Randos United a while back. And then I think you've had a conversation that was aired with Sherry as well. I can't remember all the details of that. But one of the things that I was curious about that I think I remember from maybe it was one of your conversations with Paul Nolan is, are you in and from the same town as Jordan Peterson, where he grew up?
Well, it's actually that my parents were, like, when they were young, lived in the same town as Jordan Peterson.
Okay. Did they know him?
Um, my mom had a friend that was friends with his sister,
Oh, wow.
so she could remember him a little bit. But they, more just kind of what he looked like, but not much other than that. But yeah, and I think, well, it was, my mom's friend was friends with his older sister. So she knew of him when I don't remember how I told her about it, but she could remember him a little bit.
How big of a town is that?
I'm not really sure how big it is now, but definitely wasn't very big at all, quite small.
What's the name of it?
It's Fairview, Alberta.
My Jordan Peterson stalking hasn't reached quite the level where I've looked up his hometown. I could have easily, though. That's the kind of thing I would do. But
Yeah, it was after listening to him for quite a while that I think I just saw it on Wikipedia or something, and I thought that was quite odd.
yeah,
That this guy I've been listening to for a long time, he's been quite helpful to me personally, was from the same town as my parents, was just kind of a strange thing to know, I guess.
yeah. It is kind of amazing. That's something that just comes to mind as we're talking about this, is that so even now we talk about this a lot. Jordan Peterson hasn't put out new content. He's been going through all the stuff he's been going through, but he's apparently working on his new book now, right?
Mhm.
But there's just something about, I was trying to describe this to my wife the other day. There's just something about Jordan Peterson that, and it's hard to put a finger on, that I just think that no one else has. Like I was telling my wife, at least that I can think of, like it's hard for me to compare him to any contemporary public figure. I mean, he's just unlike anyone else, and then that's interesting because I was trying to, what was it? Someone had I was bringing up. Oh, this is what happened. This is how our conversations go. I'm all over the place. So my wife, I'll just start talking about something and I'll get just like way afield from where it started, and we have to like circle back to whatever it was. But we were out driving somewhere. We went to get takeout, because we're supporting the local restaurants during this catastrophe, and we saw some girl running, but she was just, well, I don't know. probably a lot of people do this, but one of my favorite things to do, like when I'm out in a car or something, is, and you see people running or jogging or something, is we like to do commentary on just like the way that they're running. People, I have no idea how I look running, but people are just, this girl, for whatever reason, my wife noticed. I'm much meaner than my wife. I mean, she wasn't being mean about it. I probably took it and turned it mean. But she was running with just like, she had her shoulders back so far, and so, and like her stomach out. And she just looked so, like, it looked like, are you trying to contort your body like that when you run? But that made me think of like the lobster, you know, stand up straight with your shoulders back. And I brought up that point of, you know, that's one of his, is that the first point in his book?
Yeah, that's part of rule one, I think.
Yeah.
Rule one, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's, you know, it's become this meme and a joke thing that everybody makes fun of Jordan Peterson because the lobster on the Discord, we have top lobster and defeated lobster, and it's this big thing. And so a lot, and I was telling you that a lot of people, see, I'm wheeling back to my initial point, that a lot of people who have a casual or very superficial interaction with Jordan Peterson, but maybe they'll maybe pop off and make a comment or write an article kind of mocking him for this lobster, you know, these lobster things, stand up straight. But I said, really, what's so interesting about it is it's actually really deep and profound, is because it goes up. What he's saying, as far as I understand, is that standing up straight with your shoulders back is something that's so deeply ingrained in our biology and our evolution and our, I mean, I think that's usually what he says, and even our psychology and stuff. He never takes it to the spiritual level. I think he toys with that. That like doing that has significant ramifications for how you interact with the world and other people and how you're perceived and whatever. So it's actually a pretty profound thing. But I was saying, people, it's always frustrating to me when people make fun of Jordan Peterson, or even early on in his rise, when a lot of Christian thinkers, this is why I like Paul so much, a lot of Christian thinkers would just superficially critique him, and I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. This guy is very brilliant, and not only is he brilliant, it's not just a matter of being brilliant, he's a very deeply, I think, virtuous and honorable man. So like it's more than just. And anyhow, so this gets to my question for you guys. Like he's almost incomparable, I think, in any other intellectual that I can think of. So I kind of have a two phased question is, how do you guys relate to that? Do you find that to be true for yourself, or is there someone else that you can think of that's close or like him? And then why is that, do you think? And I don't know. Do you guys just have any thoughts on that? Just like his gravity, for lack of a better term.
I wouldn't say I've really encountered someone with that same kind of gravity that you're talking about. I think John Vervaeke is really the only other person that I've kind of engaged with, like, or feel that has a similar depth to what he's trying to do. I know a lot of people have kind of criticisms of what he's doing, but I think he engages with ideas at a similar level to Peterson. But yeah, no one else really comes to mind.
What is it? So for you, like, what is, because I don't think to me, it's not just it's not just charisma. It's not just, a lot of people are charismatic. It's not just that he's, smart and deep, even like a Vervaeke would be, or something like that. I mean, he's talking about things in very deep, complicated ways and levels, and he's very precise in his language, and all that's all of that's interesting, but he's not merely interesting. He's compelling, you know? And I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is. I think part of it for me is that I for lack of a better term, my intuitive sense, like I trust Jordan Peterson more than a lot of people. Like as far as people outside of my, you know, physical embodied world, like I just don't. I just think that man is so. I think he cares about almost nothing more than not lying. Like I think like that's his highest North Star, and like that to me is just like, I guess that's probably what I would have to say it is for me. That's so compelling, but
Well, the kind of thought that came to me when you were talking there was, I think for Peterson, it's not just ideas for him. It's
yeah,
not just engaging in the ideas for the sake of it. I think it's all interwoven to into his like personal story and his personal experiences, like with, I know a lot had to do with like the Cold War and worries about, like, well, worries about the destruction of the world, basically. So I think it's a really, um, for him, it's not just an academic kind of endeavor. I think it's equally, perhaps more so, just things that he personally was grappling with and felt like he needed to understand at the kind of deepest level that he could manage to do.
There's a meaning or purpose behind what he's doing.
yeah. Well, I think it's just I think that's part of it too. Is he's not just smart. He's like and I mean you can see this too because the guy. I mean, part of it's the struggles of his life, but he's so he feels like he could cry just like that all the time. Like he's deeply in touch um with the emotional side, and so it's not just. I never get the impression from him like a lot of talking heads or in a debate. If he's having, he does what I call non-talking talking. When he's talking, and this isn't perfect, but I feel like he's really listening. He's really engaging. He's really seeking truth and trying to all the time orient himself to the good and to the truth rather than like um in the famous conversation with Kathy Newman, you know, he's not having just like he's not just trying to win. It's not like a competition hierarchy to win the conversation. And he talks about that often, like even with your wife. He's just like, you have an argument and you win the argument. Like, did you win? That's not winning. You know, he's like, you might lose. Um, he just does all those things simultaneously. And I don't know. There aren't, I think that's probably it. The modern world is so full of tribalistic ideologues that are just trying to push their paradigm to win, that he stands in very stark contrast to that, and you're just like, oh, finally, thank God. someone someone who I can believe, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it as well. Yeah, it just seems like also that the timing of things just worked out for some reason. He
Oh,
just,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
for him to get, like, for him to blow up because of that bill and everything. The
Yeah.
Canadian bill, yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of a question that I have in this lull past Jordan Peterson, and because I don't know. So I know with Jeff more, but like Nolan, I mean, how you're obviously on Discord and you're in the Vanderclay world, and you said Vervaeke. You probably know Vervaeke stuff better than I, because I really dabble in Vervaeke stuff. So like, who are the big uh, thinkers or um, public people that you follow now that Jordan Peterson is off the grid a little bit?
Not that many that I can think of, to be honest. It's more engaging with like this Vanderclay community
Yeah.
and a few other similar communities. Um, the well, Paul talked to them once. They have a YouTube channel called Sorting Myself Out,
Mm-hmm.
so they're kind of in a similar sphere. So I engage with a lot with people over there as well, and more so it's felt like I moved from some of the, I guess, more public thinkers more towards a smaller scale engagement with other people that are interested in similar ideas. So I don't really follow that many public figures, really. Just kind of the, I guess, intellectual dark web kind of cast with the Weinsteins and a little bit with like rebel wisdom and that kind of stuff. But yeah, no one else really comes to mind that I follow super closely or anything.
You guys think Jordan Peterson has been successful? And I don't mean that in like a super, like financially or something, like in his, in what you perceive or understand his kind of like driving heart. You feel like he's been successful?
I kind of feel like he's done his part, like, and I don't know that it's necessary, or I don't know if necessary is the right word, but I kind of feel like he's done his part to a large degree. Now there's the other part of me that obviously got a lot out of the work he did and would like him to continue engaging with things like the Bible and that kind of stuff. But kind of feels like he's done what he's needed to.
What do you use as a measure of success, or do you have an idea of success in that question, Luke?
I don't know. I don't really know what I was thinking when I said it, which is normal. um, I think the way that Paul has said it many times is that he thinks that Jordan's goal was most basically to help people. And I think that's true. I mean, that's just just to think about what his goal would be is an interesting thing. Because I think, Nolan, what you were saying is true. I think Jordan has said that at different times and in various ways of essentially trying to stop the totalitarian impulse of us just killing ourselves, essentially. world wars. um, and I don't know. I've never read Maps of Meaning. I've heard. I mean, you hear that's kind of the core of his thinking, and there's so many conversations, and everything is really kind of an outflow of almost what he was trying to put together in that. So I think you get a lot of the bits of it, but I almost feel like I think probably most at the core, maybe Jordan was trying to I don't know. I mean, is it too easy to say fix the world? You know, like orient what he sees as wrong with the world as evil, as opposed to the good, as opposed to like what Sam Harris would say, the human flourishing. I think Jordan, in as much as he can, is trying to do the opposite of that. And I think the way he thinks you can do that is through uh, helping individuals clean up their room, you know, rightly orient their lives. And then the ripple effects flow out of that. I think because we're in these circles, you hear a lot of stories of people doing those things. I mean, I think Jordan Peterson has helped me a lot. I think he's helped a lot of us in these circles a lot. And so I think seeing the ripples of those things affect, I don't know, that's just the thing. I think real change that like do what's meaningful, not what's expedient. Real change that's not quick, it takes a long time to see the fruit of. So I think he probably was successful in broadly tilting the world a little bit more towards heaven and away from hell, as he says sometimes. But as I love to quoting Dave Bazan, quoting Gillian Welch, time is the revelator. So we'll see.
I think the thing that sticks out to me, where I sense that he's been successful, or what I would measure as success, as it's salient to me, is he has guided people out of nihilism, people that I've been, in conversation with, but then just from a broader perspective, just hearing stories where, they just didn't have any motivation, didn't see any meaning in life, didn't see any purpose behind trying anything, and helping them to see reality in a new and a different way, like you said, to help them orient differently, has guided people out of depression and out of just mentally and physically unhealthy places. And so I think that he's been successful there in at least moving people in a more positive, helping people to move in a more positive direction. Whether or not they've taken any more positive steps after that, in some cases, maybe no. In many cases, maybe people have taken several leaps and bounds forward. I know for me, I have a tendency not to be motivated to do or try much of anything. And after listening to him and digging into his future authoring program, I was able to do that and just take a few small but not insignificant steps to, have some positive momentum in my life. And I think one of the things that I'm lacking in the absence of Peterson is maybe the next push forward, or the next propulsion for me. It's easy for me, at least at this stage in my life, to feel a bit of a plateau. And things that knock you off of those plateaus, that either knock you backward or give you the motivation to move forward, are sometimes brought on by chaos, right? The pandemic that we're facing globally, for some people, I think has forced them to examine how they're oriented to reality. And they might be making steps forward, or they might be getting knocked down right now. And so, whenever I just speculate, or whenever I just talk about, yeah, I feel like maybe I've lost a little bit of that momentum that I got from my interaction with Peterson. I feel like I'm also tempting fate, or tempting the gods, to say, all right, well, if you need some motivation, I can certainly take away certain things from you that will help, stir the fires, or stoke the coals, or get your creative juices flowing to find a way to make life better in some meaningful way, or perhaps give you cause, Jeff, to fall back into a little pit of despair. Who knows? So I don't know. There's just always this part of me of be careful whenever you say things, or be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it, and even more than you were planning on, or more than you were thinking of. And I suppose that's one of the things about reality that is exciting, is you never know what's around the corner, and you never know what's going to happen next. And it is wise to plan, but who told me this? I think it was my brother, when I was having a conversation with him a month or so ago. He said, if you if you follow one of the things that Jesus said in his teachings about, tomorrow has enough trouble, essentially focus on today, focus on the present. My brother said, and if right now is the time to plan, do that right now in this moment. If you need to make plans for something that you have a pretty good idea of what's coming, go ahead and make plans for it, but just do that in the moment, and then let it go. Don't worry. Make the plan if it's time to plan. And then, he didn't say this, but it makes me think of I can't remember in what writing it was that was attributed to Solomon, but for everything there's a season.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of a Petersonianism too, or maybe it's not, but I'm just attributing this to Peterson. Of just take care of what's in front of you. Maybe it is the clean up your room thing. Take care of the one thing that's right there in front of you, that's within your grasp and in your control, that you can make measurably better, that you can improve in some way, even if it seems insignificant or if it seems minor. And it's easy for me, I've noticed, when examining myself and observing how I behave, to fall away from just looking for the next little thing that I can do to improve. And so, just selfishly, and I know Peterson's been through a lot and he's still going through a lot, selfishly, I would like to have that momentum back, because he's just been a very good catalyst for me, to help me say, you know what, maybe I could do something.
Yeah. I wonder if it's I don't know, in regard to kind of everything, in line with everything you were just saying, I almost wonder if it's a good thing that Peterson went away. And I don't know, just like Matt said earlier, we just got out of, or I was listening a little bit. Didn't see you in there, Nolan, with in the chat, the Discord chat with Paul, but Matt just made some comment. He said not to be blasphemous, but so I'm about to do that. But I was saying, in the same line, when Jesus was saying to his disciples, it's better that I go and I send the Spirit. I do think, in a way, almost with Peterson, I think there is some degree in which you could say that it is better that he almost just disappeared, kind of, because I think one of the big things, in my opinion, that I think the Peterson phenomenon has and will and is continuing to address, is that is the difference between ideological kind of propositional belief and act as if belief. And I think Peterson has given everyone lots to work with in the act as if realm. Like there's plenty of stuff we could be doing. And kind of like what you were saying, Jeff, I think I have that exact same brokenness, and I think all of us do, is that very often the thing that we should be doing is the very thing that we're probably most strongly avoiding doing, which is probably right in front of our face. And we build all kinds of psychological tricks to justify and not see and not act on those things. We use all these abstraction tools to not do the thing we should be doing. And Paul said this recently too, but I think he mentioned it somewhere else, but it's a Joseph Campbell quote. I was going to say tweet. God, I'm so colonized by this stupid world. But it's, the cave you fear to enter holds the answer that you seek. And he was using that in reference to Peterson's, a lot of times the truth that you're looking for will manifest in error. Because if you're doing something and it doesn't work, well, that's telling you something. Like that doesn't work is what it's telling you. And so in that sense, I don't know. I think this is where I am, and I think honestly, if I really look at it, I think I want Peterson to come back because I like listening to him and I find him entertaining and I find him I think he makes me feel good when I listen to him, because somehow I think deceptively I can live by proxy through him, through his charisma and being, when there's a lot of stuff I could be doing probably that is I probably am a Peterson addict in that sense, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Nolan?
He's your Osho.
Yeah, he is my Osho.
Yeah, well, the thing that, or image that came to mind when you guys were talking was kind of Peterson being like the training wheels, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the training wheels have to come off at some point. It almost feels like him disappearing. Is that happening where the people who have benefited from his work now, with him gone, have to learn how to maintain things and push things forward without the, I don't know what the word is, but without the, I guess, extra motivation that he may have provided for them. And I found that personally, I've had like a few months in a row that have been fairly difficult to deal with. And I found it kind of showed me that, the areas in my life and in myself that I still need to address. And it's kind of, I don't know, Peterson not being there as more, I don't know what the word is, but it feels like I've had to go deeper into my issues and into myself in a way that I hadn't really done before.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that a lot of the stuff Peterson has helped me with has made my difficulties a lot easier to deal with than they would have been otherwise. So I feel like personally I've kind of gotten what I'm going to get out of Peterson in terms of like I don't know, wisdom, I guess you could say. That at this point it's kind of, I don't know, pushed me to the next frontier, so to speak. But now it feels like more of, I don't know, a little bit more of a sense of like solitude, but also a feeling of that this is like necessary and the next step. And yeah, I kind of lost where I was going here, but more so just feel like it's um yeah, it's just brought me to the next step of engaging with um, the areas that I could improve in on a deeper level than before. And so, yeah, it's been difficult not having that kind of, I don't know, those like small hits of motivation from Peterson. Having that disappear has made it more difficult, but it's also allowed me to forced might be a better word in some regard, forced me to really engage with things on a deeper level because I don't have that same help that had before. It's a more like on your own, really having to learn things in a more immediate kind of personal way as opposed to taking the more general ideas of someone like Peterson and implementing them. Now it seems like it's more engaging with the individual aspects of myself that the more general advice can't necessarily address.
Yeah, because it has to be, because you have to particularize that. Um, and I think that's true. I don't know, when you were talking, you brought up solitude, which made me think of that poet, Rainier Rilke, who, because he talks a lot about solitude, and it's just something, for me at least, it's related to this, I think, but it's just been so personally true, and honestly, it's still something that I avoid a lot, is because Rilke talks about not some of the deepest forms of love are protecting each other's solitudes, and he talks about like not running from your solitude, because in your solitude is where you will find an infinite expanse, an openness of potential in your solitude. And I think a lot of that is connected to Peterson, and it's connected to cleaning your room, both literally but also figuratively, and taking the log out of your eye and putting into and acting as if putting, not just listening to these ideas, listening to Peterson getting all fired up from a lecture, or listening to a sermon and getting fired up from it, or people talk about like the mission trip mountaintop experience, and then you come down and the letdown of coming home, because you have these ideas and this experience, but you're using, there's a way to use ideas and experience or Peterson or anything as a drug, as a dopamine hit, as a way to feel better without actually taking that spiritual reality and then manifesting it and instantiating it in your own personal life, which is the point. And that's another Rilke thing. Like, the point is to live everything.
Yeah.
And so if you don't, I think that's true, and that goes back to like Peterson taking a time away, because I relate to that. I relate to that a lot, Nolan, because and that's very much the truth of it, is like, and even this is something that comes up all the time, like having a conversation like this and talking about all these things. I mean, it's not easy necessarily, but like saying these things that are true makes you feel good, you know? It's like it gives it, this is the danger of abstraction and propositional truth, is like for me to sit here and for us to have a conversation back and forth, affirming and speaking propositional truths. Somehow our brain tricks us to being like, oh, you're actually like, that's you. No, it's not. We're just talking about it. You know, we're not actually doing it is the magic, you know, and that's like, that's the book of James, right? You know, or First Corinthians, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, or James, like you say, you know, be warm and well fed, but you don't give them a coat or food. It's like your faith is meaningless. So like the money is always in the act as if belief. And, but that's actually the hardest thing to do, because that's what's most real. And so it's really easy to listen to podcasts or lectures or go to church, or even read your Bible. Read your Bible a whole bunch. It's meaningless if you don't act on it. If you don't actually love your neighbor, and not even theoretically. Dostoevsky talks about that, not in like the abstracted, not in some kind of abstracted, meaningless love, but like in a true embodied active love. He talks about, you know, that like a Mother Teresa kind of love, you know.
This may have been an idea that you were talking about before, Luke, because I think I remember you mentioning it. And as I bring it up, hopefully, you know, you can flesh it out for me a little bit more. But it was somebody's idea you were talking about when we're talking abstractions, or we're even talking about a figure that we're listening to that we're getting really inspired by, or the mountaintop experience or whatever. But there's more to it than that. It's in line with what you were talking about, but it has to do with, it was using the illustration of like eating, right? You can look at an apple, it can look beautiful, you can even hold it, it feels really, you know, it's pleasing to the eye. But in order for it to actually do its full work with you, you have to incorporate it. You have to eat it. You have to digest it, and then you have to metabolize it, and that's what actually has its full course through you and becomes a part. It and you become a part of the same work. And I can't recall what that was that you were talking about.
Well, that I think I was first started thinking about that. It was a conversation with Peugeot and JP Marceau, I think, and they were talking about the violence and the grace of eating. And they were saying like you have to do violence on the food and to eat it and digest it and go down. And then part of that was me riffing on that, saying like it doesn't do you any good to hold food. It actually doesn't do you any good to chew it up and spit it out. It doesn't actually even do you any good if you swallow it but then throw it up. Like you actually have to fully metabolize it to the point where it becomes you. It becomes part of your body. And I think this is where all those things play together. I call that, and then I just gave that the shorthand, Eucharistic knowledge, because it's not just regurgitating ideas. Like that isn't knowledge. If you can just, what we're doing right here, most at its deepest level, this isn't knowing something. Knowing is acting on these things. This is why the act as if stuff matters so much. And this is why I love what that made me think of. This is why I love the Jordan Peterson, that he wouldn't answer like the bodily resurrection question, because it doesn't matter. Him giving you the answer you want to hear doesn't matter. Does he act like he believes in the bodily resurrection? That's what matters. And that's my favorite. So my two favorite Jordan Peterson things that I have gotten out of him and that I think he's doing is act as if versus mere affirming propositions, and truth. Speaking your truth and living your truth is the bulwark against hell. Like even if you're wrong, saying what you actually think, speaking the truth, not just what you think you ought to believe. That's something else I've often said. Like, you know, Paul said that recently. He said, in a recent conversation, he said something like, oh, it was in the Logos Made Flesh conversation. I don't know if you guys saw that, but he talked with that guy who runs that YouTube channel. But he said, I'm much less interested anymore in, he said, like, even in a Sunday school meeting of someone who gives the right answer, you know, he's like, whatever, it's fine. Like, great, you said the right answer. Congratulations. I call that the Sunday school answer, because it's like if you ask a bunch of kids, you know, like, how do we get to heaven someday? Jesus, you know, like that's, you know, doesn't, you know, it's not a high bar. But that's very different. Like it's easy to do that. You can memorize, you can regurgitate the propositions. Like you can be fed these propositions your whole life of like, these are the things you should say. This is correct doctrine. And you can regurgitate that. That is not Eucharistic knowing. That is not the kind of knowledge that saves. That is not embodying Christ. It's just not. And so when Jordan Peterson says, like, do you believe in the bodily resurrection? What he's doing and refusing to answer that is like, I'm not going to play your propositional abstraction game. Like I'm not playing that game. And I was just like, when? Yes. So I don't know. That's
a lot of my fear or my reticence to have conversations before all of this happened over the last, for me, it's been, I don't know, a year and a half since hooking on, maybe 2 years, picking up on Peterson and then leading to Paul and then leading to a conversation with Paul and then leading to a conversation with you, Luke, and other people in the Paul Vander Kleosphere. A lot of the things that before all this that I was just always reticent to talk about my ideas was for fear of what you were talking about right there. Fear of not saying what it is that I'm supposed to believe. Not saying what it is that I'm supposed to say, but rather just saying, here's what's on my mind. I'm not saying this with an agenda to try to, self-justify or prove myself right or prove wrong. It's just, I just want to get it out there and then see what I think about it after hearing myself say it, to see what you think about it just based on your reaction, whether you even have a response or if you just sit there and you take it all in, like Paul does so well. He'll just let people talk. And sometimes he just doesn't have a response, right? He might disagree with it vehemently.
Sure.
Not going to say it.
Yeah.
Not going to say it because he's being generous in that moment because you need to work it out. I haven't talked about this experience yet. I might as well, now that I've opened it up. I was like, I don't know what the right time is to talk about it. But we're going to have a conversation at some point with Charlie off of the Discord, Thought Journey. And he has been on the Randos United channel before because he just reached out and wanted to have a conversation. And so I had a conversation with him. It may have been his first time ever going out on YouTube. I don't know. I can't recall. But he's a former Southern Baptist youth minister. He eventually became an atheist, and we talked a little bit about that in our conversation. And when he was telling his story about what made him an atheist, and I think he was considering himself an atheist at the time that we had our conversation that went on to Randos United. Charlie and I have come up in somewhat similar evangelical conservative Christian circles, right? And so when he started talking about part of his story in that conversation where he said, I just saw how the people in this congregation were reacting to this very charitable and very noble work that I was trying to help recruit either resources or chaperones, or I can't remember the details, but essentially just seeing that the adults in the congregation didn't just seem to have any kind of passion for it, just made him think, there is no God. And I wanted to respond in that moment, but I held back. I wanted to respond, and I wanted to say, what does their reaction have anything to do with whether or not you believe in God? There was an instinct in me to want to chastise him. And I don't feel this way. It was just something that rose up in me. I talked about this before in mine and your conversation with Sam, Luke, Brett, and Link, where it's just like this hostility toward what I feel like is somebody who's a traitor outside of the tribe that I came out of,
Yeah.
And it's, not calling Charlie a traitor or anything like that. When you watch this, Charlie, don't, I have nothing but love for you. But I learned something in that moment, because one of the things that Charlie has said is, after I got a chance to watch that conversation and hear myself in that conversation, I really started to rethink a lot of the ways that I was thinking about this and the way that I was seeing. He would have said he was agnostic. And anyway, just the way that I was framing things and hearing myself talk about it really just had me start questioning some more things. And so I don't even remember how I got off on this tangent, but it's just in these conversations, I just think it's one of the things that it links all the way back to how we started this conversation about Jordan Peterson. Has he been successful, and why is he, why do we think that he's valuable, or what do we find meaningful? For me, it is being able to clear that space to start talking about what you truly think, whether you're right or wrong, but just to try to speak the truth, or at least don't lie, to use that, And I catch myself trying to do that more and more often. Like, I'll be having a conversation with my wife, and I'll say something, and then she'll start talking, and then I'll say, whoa, hang on just a second. I just realized that I was saying something right there that now that I'm examining it after hearing it, I don't think is true.
Yeah.
And to be able to have spaces with people where you can do that, versus people who are just going to jump in and try to contradict you and try to show you where you're wrong, I think is very valuable. And I think Peterson, in some way that I can't even fully articulate, has created that for a lot of people, at least for this community. I think that he has played a major role in providing that forum.
No, I think that's 100%. I agree with all that. It was really good. Sorry, you had a little house tour. I don't know if all this will show up. I was looking, I had to go look up a book because I thought of a quote. It's how I think all the time. Like, when people are talking, I'm listening to them, but then that'll remind me of a book, or it'll remind me of a movie quote, or it'll remind me of a song. I always think in terms of movies, books, and song lyrics, really. That's, I don't know what that means, but
I do the same thing. But most of my quotes are just Lewis quotes, so that can be really annoying really quickly, especially if you live with me.
I think it's fascinating. Your ability to just recall, and the breadth of Lewis is unbelievable, I think. But
I'll let you find that quote, but I'm sorry, Nolan, I've been talking a long time. Do you have any thoughts on any of that, or anything completely different?
Just when you were talking there, it made me think of the beneficial, and when he talks about the kind of structure of the church. And what I was thinking there was that before these type of communities were here, or prior to Peterson, it seemed like the church had almost forgotten about the narthex, I think, which is kind of the just inside the church, but right near the outside.
Mm.
Like
And
the
these
lobby.
communities, yeah, exactly. And that's what these communities kind of remind me of, where people aren't afraid so much to, I don't know, be heretics, so to speak, and just say what's really on their mind, and um have kind of people involved with the church be able to give them that space without having to think, or without thinking somehow they're letting people in where they shouldn't be, but they're giving them the space that's in the church, but not all the way in, so to speak, where they're given room to talk and they're given room to be in the church, but also you don't have to sacrifice your own like religious beliefs to do that. You can just allow people to talk, and having that space is actually the healthiest way to do it, whereas trying to pretend that people don't believe things that are outside of the orthodoxy, like trying to ignore that and not have any type of space for that, it's just going to end up backfiring in the end. You'll come to the point where eventually, you know, the water's going to get out of the dam and things, the flood is going to come, which is going to be a lot worse than if you just allow people that space to talk.
Yeah, yeah, that's been very big for me, and I didn't even realize what was going on until I was on the other side of that kind of discussion, and then just seeing it kind of unfold in the weeks and probably now months later.
So, sorry, I got distracted towards the end of that, Nolan. But what you were saying at the beginning with like the I don't know, I've heard people say too, like the outer court ministry, the place where people, inquirers can come in to faith or religious conversations or any conversation, because that really, I mean, that's kind of the larger experience we're having in the West, right? Is that there's all these groups that have like these Jonathan Haidt, religion binds and blinds, and find any religious group and you'll find these circles of sacrosanct belief that are unquestionable. But that's any religious group. It's not just Christian groups. It's you know any ideology. I mean, find any group that you want that has like, you can't believe this and be in our group, and they'll kick you out. But what that does is it really narrows your ability to see largely, and it's related to this. And so this is related. The book is Loris, plug for Loris again, but there's a section here, one of the parts that I always remember. Am I echoing? Oh. But so there's Loris is talking to his grandfather, Christopher, who's a writer, and there's all these great quotes about writing, and like a writer's interest should be as broad as the world, and I don't know, there's a lot of great stuff about writing. But he says they're talking one day and they're having a question, and then the grandfather says this, and he says, "At times it is not crucial how a word is spoken and by whom. All that is important is that it has been spoken, or at the very least thought." And I just thought, I don't know, that just like, when I read the book, you talk about salience. There's just certain things that just like boom, because that's how I don't. This is really how I see myself, as I am kind of one of those shaman type people. Like I can't even necessarily explain stuff or articulate why, but I think I have a radar for really important things, and they just like blow up at me. It's just like I'll read something like that and I'll just be like, I don't know why, but that's important, and it just sticks in my mind. And I think that's true. But like so in relation to like the Narthex and the church and having a space where people can say what they really think, my project has essentially always been, from my first conversation to Paul, is ask the question, and I think I have fairly good answer to this too, is why has the church become the kind of place where people think that they can't say what they really think? Why has the church become a place where you're either cultivating yes men who unquestionably just follow the dogma, the prescription, what they think they're supposed to believe, whether or not they actually believe it, they just get right in line and follow it, or you create a group of people who lie, who say they believe it when they don't really believe it, or you create a group of people who genuinely don't know if they believe it and wonder, or really authentically don't, and you just automatically exclude them from community. I mean, when you do that, when you set up and you systematize it to be able to do that, you're going to breed a really unhealthy system. Because I don't know, I think about it also in terms of like Ian McGilchrist's right brain, left brain stuff, is like, these are the maps. These are the formulations. These are the doctrines. These are the things everybody needs to believe. And if you don't think these are the right maps, you're out. But the other brain over here with the territory is saying like, I don't know if that map matches up to the territory, and I have all these reasons for doing it. And they're like, nope, this is it.
Mm.
Well, you get into a really, in Jordan Peterson terms, the right brain over here is like, that's the openness to seeing the things that you don't see, and to where the truth can manifest in error.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where I get into, like I've said before, I got sick of going to church with what I call the gospel of just try harder. It's like, if it's just not working, it's just do it more, just believe it harder, just preach it more strongly. Like, they went out from us because they were not of us. The reason our church is falling apart and everyone's leaving and then no one's here is because they're not true believers. Just reinterpret it within your framework. Don't look for that really scary answer in that cave that's just like, maybe they're right. Like, maybe some of the people who are questioning this whole thing are right, or they have something valuable to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially the church that has become a totalizing authoritarian structure. Sorry, they get a lot of preachy. I get a little preachy.
I was watching somebody the other day on Instagram. I hate admitting that I go onto Instagram. I'm way too old to be out there. But I was watching somebody do a live stream, little video on Instagram, and she started talking about how if something seems really, 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 really good, like purely great, there's probably a little bit of darkness or something that we think is bad in there somewhere. And conversely, if there's something that we think is just really, really, really bad and horrible, there's probably something a little bit good in there too. And then after she said it, it just made me think of the image of the yin yang, the yin yang. It's not yang. Yeah, it is. Whatever, the Taoist symbol.
Yeah.
And Peterson has talked about this before. How there's a little opposite spot right there of the varying colors. Right, you've got the field of black with a little bit of white in it, and you've got the field of white with a little bit of black in it.
Yep.
And that's just what that reminded me of. I know we're running close to the end. Is there anything, Nolan, that you wanted to say before we had to go?
Not that I can think of. I think with that last kind of discussion point, you guys covered most of the territory. So I'm kind of blanking on anything else to talk about. So
I have a way to. So that I was gonna say I was gonna have to leave in a little bit because I got to deal with some practical life things. You know, I got to go embody all these things. But I was gonna make the joke if I bowed out and you guys continued for a while for Andreas, that because he was giving me, Andreas always loves to give me crap. Like in the Discord, he was saying, he said something like, "Don't give Luke the mic. He won't give it up." And so I was gonna be like, "I'll leave, so then other people can have the mic." But yeah, I don't. It's what I think is so great about the conversations that we have in this corner of the internet is that they play in they're not just like you were saying earlier, Nolan, about Jordan Peterson. It's not just ideas for the sake of ideas. Like it's that's one of the things I probably love about Peterson. It's a very Peugeot thing. He plays in the abstract, spiritual, idealistic world, but it's very practical. It's very embodied. Like it's not just that for that. It's a merging of the two. It's transcendence and immanence, which which I'll just throw this out because I keep dropping it all the time, is Trinitarian. So so speaking of that, this is a very practical thing. Sam Adams, that's a perfect example. The biblical Unitarian who joined this community. I have come to a fuller, more robust and meaningful, like seeing it everywhere, very excited. I'm thinking Trinitarian things all the time. I'm thinking about that conversation, those ideas constantly. And it's because we included in this community a heretic, you know, but a very thoughtful one who, I mean, and I say that, I don't actually even think, this is like, I can get a little pedantic in these things where I'll just be like, I don't even really think Sam is a heretic, you know, ultimately, probably, or I don't care, I guess, ultimately. Like, I think he's being honest. So, I don't know. It's important. I think one of probably the healthiest ways to think about it, like knowing what you were saying, is the church, is there are spaces, you know, there's centers and there are peripheries. And I said this, I actually did say this in a tweet a long time ago to Preston Sprinkle at him. It was about, and it's related to all this LGBTQA stuff too, is that I think, and I think this works politically, but I also think it works temperamentally and broadly, is that the conservative impulse is to exclude the fringe, ignore the fringe, pretend it doesn't exist. Just get rid of them. We don't need the fringe. Well, that's dangerous, and that becomes totalitarian. But then the overly liberal impulse can be like, the center is bad. We don't need the center. We need to replace the center with the fringe. Well, that's not, nope, that's not a good idea either.
The instinct is to normalize the fringe. Like
Right.
saying.
Right. And I think those are both bad impulses. So that's the best thought I have for me to close on. I don't want to have the last word. Damn it. And then Andres will be right. See? Say something. Someone.
so maybe I'll just plug some of my poetry here.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a poem that kind of addresses that idea, which is the one called Nihilistic Cathedral, which is, anyways, in one of the lines of the poems, the gargoyles are mentioned, but instead of being outside of the cathedral, they're on the inside, devouring it. So the idea is to have them in the right place, but if you bring the fringe all the way inside, then the structure itself will just fall apart.
Yeah. That's good. Is that on the writer server?
Might be somewhere, but it's on a website I have.
Oh, you should send it to Jeff. If we post this, you can put it in there because I'd be interested to read it.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people would.
Sure.
I'm happy to put it in the notes if you want to send it to me.
All right, boys. We gotta go get toilet paper.
Good luck.
Thank you. And pizza, because it's pizza night.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea. All right. Well, it's good talking to you guys. I'll see you around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Peace, man.
Bye.
Bye.